Welcome back to another build challenge video. Today we're going to be looking at what is really honestly a hot piece of garbage, the MULE booster, 0400 MULE. Wow, this thing has almost nothing to justify it. It took me a long time to come up with a build that was even remotely viable with it, but I did come up with something kind of fun. There are definitely more tough matchups with this build than others of mine, but you'd be surprised what you can win against with it. So let's go ahead and just take a look at the MULE first. Then I'll talk about the build piece synergies, how they come together, and then we'll look at some PvP matchups and go from there. I also came up with a pretty cool tech as well that involves pulse protection, which is going to become very clutch for the Scudum, which I'll talk about shortly. Okay, but keeping things on track, the MULE booster. So this booster has basically everything is at zero for what matters out of a booster. Your thrusts and your the stats that change how you move are more important than the stats that affect your EN consumption. Efficiency stats cannot carry the day with boosters, and this thing has nothing going for it. Even the one stat that isn't zero essentially is the jet duration, but because your QB thrust is so bad, it doesn't even matter. You're not going to be able to be making this booster terribly evasive. It doesn't even have a good QB reload time, and the consumption is quite heavy. So the only stats I think are worth even mentioning here is that you can gain altitude for cheap, but you aren't going to do it quickly. So that will synergize with the Scudum as well, by the way. And the ideal weight is pretty good on this booster. However, in virtually every case, you should just justify the P10, sorry, not the P10, the P04, or even the P10, frankly, because even with the QB penalty, it's still going to be less than the QB reload of the MULE. However, the one thing I did end up making work with this booster is the cost. So it is the lightest and lowest, well, not quite the lightest, but, or is it the lightest? Yeah, it is the lightest, but it's almost the lowest on EN load as well. We're going to take advantage of both of those cheap stats. If you look at on the right side, total load and total EN load, this build is maxed. We don't even have 1 point of EN load or load limit to support anything else. So this build is really running the gun here. We don't really need to worry about our EN supply efficiency in this case because we have the Scudum. We're not evasive anyways. Like, we just touch the ground, and it doesn't matter if the battery takes a little bit longer to get back because it's not like we're going anywhere anyways with this booster. So with all of that in mind, I realized that I was going to need something to make the build move quickly other than the booster. That was a natural Lammergeier suggestion, but the Lammergeier is also quite fragile, and so this ended up pushing me to run the Scudum, which was a very unusual choice to see on a build. But because we're so fragile but need that speed, we need something that'll just give us passive defense because we're not going to be shuffling off anything with dodges. And so we end up using the Scudum and then just using dropping height to dodge most of the missiles, or at least the missiles that we can dodge that way. Other ones will just block. And then also I needed a really good right shoulder piece because if you are going to be behind the Scudum, it's going to disable your left hand weapon for the majority of the fight. I end up running nothing on the left hand just to make the EN support for the energy damage of the shoulder weapon here. But because you're not going to be using it anyways unless your build revolves around purging the Scudum after you activate pulse armor, and then you have access to a new build style once the shield's gone. I did do that as well as some other builds, but in this one I found the most successful. Okay, so the two weapons I am going to have, right shoulder, right hand, are going to need to work against almost every type of build, and that really limits our options. I need auto fire to get around shields with the attaché. I need the burst damage and just like the innovatability of the LCD because of its spread attack when you tap fire it. It has more like a shotgun spread, and that's really good for catching lightweights. I'll just show you that here. So that fan out pattern becomes quite flexible for us. And then the frame parts were essentially forced tier 2. So we need to run the ephemera in order to get enough energy out of the 20B to support the Talbot with the LCD. And you could swap this for the Etzogen and save a little bit of energy, but I really hate running the Etzogen because of how meta it is. The headpiece, we're just going for high stability, low EN cost as much as possible because we really want to give the Scudum a big pool of stability to work with. The ephemera core, however, can't help us in that regard because we need the max amount of generator output in order to get this LCD supported with a 20B. And then the Lammergeier legs themselves are also extremely expensive in EN. So we really were trying to thread the needle here with EN support. The best arms we can get for firearm spec and stats while still keeping us in that low EN range and low weight range is the Melander C3s. And that basically covers everything. The reason that we run pulse protection is quite interesting. So you can't deploy a shield when you activate pulse armor. So if I were to pop this and then try to deploy a shield, I can't activate it. And the Scudum shield has major buffs needed, in addition to just its after IG block rate of 70% impact. That needs to go up to 88%. I don't know what they were thinking with 70% on a shield that stops you from QBing and assault boosting, and basically like all evasion is completely negated. You're going to be taking everything on the chin. That needs to be like 88%. And then also I think the charge up time needs to go way down. So right now it's 4 seconds. I think that needs to be brought down to 2 seconds. But we're in the game that we're in right now. Before I leave the stat screen here, you'll notice the idle damage and impact mitigation is terrible. You're actually taking a penalty if you block things in this 4 second in terms of impact. You'll basically be multiplying the opponent's weapons because it converts it all to a cumulative impact before mitigation, and it's barely mitigating even 20%. So with them getting the 2-to-1 ratio of impact to cumulative impact, you're largely going to be just getting staggered almost immediately. So we need a way to, once we activate our expansion, prevent us from taking any hits. And the pulse protection shield is uniquely good at that. There's also a really cool tech, which if you probably just saw there that I did, which is right after you activate it, you'll notice there's like a glowing symbol on you that like fades. If you press jump right as it ends, you'll actually do it like as though you're grounded, an aerial jump, and then you'll be above your sphere of protection, which is really handy because you get 2 layers with which to work with to try to like seesaw back and forth as your opponent tries to hit you or rush you or go around. You can always just go on either side of it, and then your attacks can go through pulse protection, but theirs can't. So that'll give you A, time to shrug off any impact buildup that you've already had, and B, restart the shield and get it fully charged before you start taking another hit. You want to be careful not activating it too early or it'll just fly away. So you do kind of want to tempt the opponent into fighting to not lose the impact they built up by getting, like, I would say about half your impact bar filled up, and ideally you have the health lead with your LCD. So I'm just waiting for him to get a little bit of damage or impact on me here. We'll just pretend. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to go early, get my battery back, and then I'm going to go up into the air, activate the expansion, jump right as that fades, reinitiate hover, and then start charging the shield again. And then try to keep them on the other side. If they rush you down, you can drop and go down inside the sphere, or all the way through if they're just like really on top of you. But the point is you're going to manipulate around the sphere in order to prevent any hits from refreshing your stagger buildup and making it so you have to wait all over again. Additionally, you don't want to be taking hits while the shield's charging, so that's another reason. Other than that, like I said, you're basically using your super high move speed paired with the Attache's long range that it can poke and build up impact, as well as the LCD in that regard too, just for pure damage. And try to make the fight an AP race. If you stagger them, you can go for the stagger punish with either the regular shot, or if you see it coming, it is worth going for the charged LCD hit. So I'll just build up a little bit of impact here. Kick here. You'll notice how fast the 20B allows us to charge this thing up really quick, so it's basically ready to go. That also allows you to back up while charging it up too, so that you get more space and gives you an opportunity to refresh the shield, your stability build up if you can outspace them depending on their loadout. If you know you're going to get staggered, it's often best to just drop the Scudum so that it's not overheated, because it takes a long time. And you can either, depending on the matchup, you can either play for space, either by going up into the air, or you can purge it and just take the energy lift to your energy supply and use that to play on the ground a little bit more evasively. You want to stay close to the ground though, because this booster is not good for energy efficiency, and you are going to need to touch the ground and then get your battery back really quickly, whereas before it was loading really slowly. So in general, I would say, unless you have the ability to respace, don't try to get greedy and go for another Scudum reactivation, because the amount of impact you'll take in those 4 seconds will basically negate any benefit you would have got from the Scudum anyways. You'll be almost staggered. So in most cases, it's worth purging, unless it's a build that you can space out and buy yourself 4 seconds with the lamb leg hover mode to get your shield back up. Cover play is going to be a huge part of this build too. You really want to be fighting for every opportunity to get your stability bar refreshed by manipulating around cover. especially because you can move so fast backwards. You're going to be orbiting around like different boulders, tall cover and whatnot, and fighting to stay low to the ground if they're trying to play high, and just really working those corners to block off any hits and make them work for it if they're going to keep your stability bar from decaying down and making them have to start all over with the Scutum. So that basically covers the build. That's the mule, and all the build parts are pretty self-explanatory, like I said. So yeah, the build is completely maxed out. We cannot swap out the mule in this build. It has to be the mule. Let's jump into some PvP.